On Tuesday, the Alberta government announced more changes to its pandemic management policies, and it's like a yo-yo. They open it up, they close it down, they open it up, they close it down, and you need a scorecard to keep track of the players or the policies in this case. I'm going to talk to Lorian Hardcastle. She's a professor, the Faculty of Law, University of Calgary, to see if we can't sort out this mess. Welcome to the interviews, Lorian.
Thank you for having me.
Well, look, I don't know what to make of this. I mean, we've got contact tracing and isolation, or contact tracing at least, restored in schools, and there's a few, little additions to that I think parents will find useful. We've got some rapid testing, which we haven't had before, and we've also got some booster shots, so third vaccines. Walk us through your general take on this.
Well, I think that bringing back contact tracing in schools is important. That should not have been allowed to fall off the rails in the first place. We know that there are many cases among school-aged children. Parents are, of course, concerned about long COVID. There are outbreaks. We hear anecdotal reports of outbreaks in individual schools, or even schools that have had to close or open early or open late. And so clearly schools have been a concern, but the government hasn't wanted to admit that. And I think that schools are the last thing that we want to close. If we have to close everything else down, schools are the last thing we want to close. And we can't really understand how safe or not schools are if we're not doing contact tracing. So I wholeheartedly approve of bringing contact tracing back. It never should have fallen off the rails in the first place. The part that concerns me, though, is that schools themselves are expected to do that contact tracing until the government, till AHS picks up and starts doing that contact tracing for them. Schools have been asked to do so much during the pandemic and have been doing unofficial contact tracing and other things. And I think it's time that the government stop downloading their responsibilities onto schools, school principals, teachers, the like. So, but bringing contact tracing back was a positive step. I think the rapid testing in schools is also a good thing. There are parents who have reported at times not being able to get testing appointments or results quickly, and this enables them to have some peace of mind. And certainly other jurisdictions have used rapid tests to some success in different groups of individuals. So that's another move that I think was a good one, but again, should have been in place at the very beginning of the school year. With respect to some of the other changes around booster shots, I think there is evidence that among those who are vulnerable, booster shots can be a positive development. But of course, whenever we're talking about booster shots, and in particular, boosters in large swaths of the population, we get into those equity concerns where there are countries where people have had no shots, and it's going to be very difficult to stop a global pandemic if there are still countries that are experiencing significant COVID outbreaks.
You and I have had a couple of interviews in which we've discussed the individual's ability to do personal risk assessments around COVID-19 in the absence of data, in the absence of credible information and guidance from the government. And it seems like parents were sent back to school in early September with none of that. I mean, they were just shooting blind. They didn't know if there was an outbreak in their kid's class. Maybe they heard it anecdotally, maybe they didn't hear about it at all, or maybe they heard about it, days afterwards. They had no means to just make decisions about whether to keep their child in class or to put them back online from home. And yeah, I agree. I mean, this is 5 weeks too late, and it should have been done. Should have been talking about this in August, but of course, then the government was mum about everything in August.
Yeah, I think the personal choice piece and sort of having knowledge to exercise that personal choice is particularly important in Alberta, where the government has tended to err on the side of more lenient restrictions. And so it's particularly important to know what my risks are if the restrictions aren't that stringent, because I need to be able to decide if I should be exceeding those restrictions. So this is a government that will leave schools open almost at all costs. And so I would need to know as a parent well, what is my child's risk? And if they're immunocompromised, I might want to keep them home even if schools are open. And so things like the rapid testing and contact tracing give me that information to make appropriate choices for my child and my family.
Yeah, I see here that one of the initiatives that'll, or the new programs that'll come out will be an online map to view alerts and outbreaks at schools. And I think that's such important information. I mean, every day you can go and check and see what's going on at your kids' schools, and just make a decision that day based on the data. That seems to me just a sense, and it's these kinds of web-based data management systems are. I mean, today they're simple. Why this couldn't have been put in place last year is a mystery.
I think the mapping one is especially important because, of course, your children see children from their own school, but if they're doing activities in the community, playing hockey with other kids, they may attend other schools in that neighborhood as well. So it's useful to a parent to see not only what's going on at my child's school, but maybe also what's going on at the Catholic school down the street, because my kids may be on the same sports teams or play at the same playgrounds or go to the same daycare as those kids. So I think the mapping tool is useful for a number of reasons.
Well, I guess, Lorian, we'll see how this all rolls out, because if anything we've learned from the past, the first, second, third, and now the fourth wave in Alberta, is that even those policies that get rolled out often are done in a haphazard way, and it's like the not vaccine passport that turned out to be editable in a PDF, and anybody could forge it. So it essentially became useless. It had no value because you couldn't trust the document itself. It could have been forged. And so I think the feedback I'm getting from Albertans is that even when something like this is announced and it sounds good, everybody is skeptical until they actually see it in practice.
Yeah, and there have been enforcement issues throughout. The other issue in this case is we actually haven't seen the public health order yet. This is a jurisdiction that continues to publish the public health order after the announcement, which leaves people not knowing what their legal obligations actually are. And that's, of course, problematic in a democracy, to have laws enforced that you can't see. And so the order reflecting yesterday's changes is still not up on the website. And so we'll need to see the official rules and what enforcement looks like to know how this will play out. But I think the unfortunate thing is just that this is a government that continues to impose restrictions when things are in a terrible state, and they do it too late. And so even if these restrictions are helpful, and we've already seen that the bringing back masking is showing up in the numbers, how many people got sick and even died while we were waiting for the government to beef up these rules throughout September?
And I think we should also refer back to an interview that you and I did about those public health orders, because this government does everything at the last minute. It's like they announce it in the afternoon, and nobody's told Alberta Health Services, and then Dr. Dina Hinshaw has to have her staff draft up the public health order overnight, and they're sloppy and confusing and poorly done. And this is a theme that repeats itself over and over again, and effectively leads to the ineffective implementation that we just referred to.
Yeah, it's problematic from a democratic perspective to not have these laws, and it makes it hard for people to know their obligations and follow their obligations. And so it's really been a problem throughout the pandemic that these rules haven't been accessible to people and businesses.
Well, Lorian, thank you very much for your insights. Appreciate it as always.
Thank you for having me.